I got to fly out there, live with him for a summer. And I pretty much moved out with 2 boxes. I had 2 boxes of stuff, and that was it. And my job was I had 2 months to find somewhere to live. And it was a whole experience.
What's going on, everybody? My name is Ryan Snaadt. It rhymes with odd, and you're listening and watching the Rhymes with Odd podcast. Today, we're hopping in the booth with another amazing guest. We got Alex Severn in the house. Alex, welcome in.
Thank you, Ryan. I appreciate you inviting me in.
I think we're taking your podcast virginity, if I might say so, right?
Yeah, we are.
Okay.
Excited and nervous. We'll see how it goes. So be easy on me, I suppose.
Sure. We've had some people on that are like, oh, I've been on like a Zoom podcast, like if that even counts, after COVID. I'm like, everybody's been on a video chat, but
yeah, I was going to say, I don't know if I could count the number of Zoom calls. Unfortunately, it was live for, a couple of years, but nice to get out in the wild.
Sure. Well, appreciate you coming in, man. I'm excited to kind of dig into your story. I know we're connected because we both went to Simpson College. Mm-hmm. I think my first memory of you is dressing up in a wig and a dress and lederhosen for homecoming, and we were playing the Dutch, and you look like a Dutch lady. That was my first impression of you ever. So kind of funny to see where you're at in life now.
Oh, that's funny. I was actually, it's funny that came up because I was talking to my wife about somebody that she went to high school with, and she's local to the area. And she was like, well, do you think that they would know who you are? And I was like, well, it might not be a good thing, but yeah, they probably do. And the reason why they would is that particular instance of dressing up like a Dutch girl at, was it homecoming, I think, for a little skit. So I did grow back the long blonde hair I should have came dressed to fit. So
if I had some lederhosen in the back, I'd give it to you, but sadly I don't. Which is hilarious because, like I said, it was my first impression of you. So of those things that probably follow you around. I'm sure like friends from college or something still have pictures to blackmail you with it. So
yeah. So if anybody's listening out there and wants to blackmail me, there you go.
Sure.
I'm sure it's still live on Facebook somewhere.
Yeah, that's amazing. So Alex is going to talk a lot about kind of his journey. It's an interesting path because you kind of started down like the political science route, kind of going through that, your master's degree, and then now where you're at with like data analytics, marketing, numbers, like business, financial analytics, all the stuff that goes into that. Mm-hmm. I'm really excited to kind of talk about this. But I guess a good place to start would probably be if you could introduce yourself. If you're, I always say in like an Uber, like a long Uber, and it's a chatty driver, and someone's like, what do you do? And you have some time to embellish. So a lot of people say it's like their worst nightmare, but like, who are you and what do you do? What do you say to people?
Yeah. To a captive audience, in general, who we are is I'm a wastage warrior. Now, what actually is that? So, look, I love seeing these proud made in America products. They grow, they support their community. There's these beautiful things. They're making these awesome things that you can feel in your hands and actually take home. And it's not just some imported piece of crap. And let's call it what it is. It's not just cheap Chinese crap that's coming overseas. They're proud of making it in their own hometown. But unfortunately, what we're seeing, and we're seeing it a little too often, is it's getting more and more expensive to get in front of the right people. Like you may feel that sometimes. But so what we help them do, and what I feel like I was put on this earth to really do, is help those made in America products drastically cut their acquisition costs. And so we do that in kind of the sales and the marketing scene. And we do it by not implementing some cheap tactic. You can see, like, oh, I got this SaaS product and, I can just quickly do this one thing. And then it ends up breaking in 10 seconds. What we really do in a nutshell is we help the owners. They go out and identify areas where they can start cutting their acquisition costs and really catapult their product forward. In general, we start having, going back to kind of the origin story, but August and I, so August is my brother and 2 years and a day older than me. Looks a lot like me, has the, fat face, and now that he hears that, he's going to give me trouble. But we started this business, I think it's been 6 years ago now. And to be honest with you, we started this business because we're like, we want to make a little money on the side. Now, both of us are full-time, and we're a data analytics business that help American manufacturers with their sales and marketing. That's what we do.
Sure. No, that's really cool. And I think it's, and we'll talk about this too, but there's so much in the data space right now I remember I was reading a stat somewhere. It's like every year that goes on in human history, there's like 10 times more data that's collected every year into the future. So you can imagine like how much data there will be in 100 years from now, because like pre-industrial revolution, like nothing could be tracked. You don't know how many sales. Hopefully, someone kept track of their accounting back in those days, like how many sales you had or how much, But it's like literally everything. Like our smartphones track your heart rate, where you're going, geographic location, like your social media accounts. They track all of your likes, your favorites, your interests. Like every single piece of life is tracked. So I think that's a huge industry that will only continue to grow. So
yeah, even moments in your life that you may not want to be tracked, like dressing up in lederhosen and having the long hair. So yeah, that lives forever somewhere on some server. So
sure. Or you're like, elevator's broken, you got to take the stairs, and then someo's like, your smartwatch, like, do I need to call an ambulance? Like, you're gonna have a heart attack and die. Heart rate's over 200. You're like, oh man. So I think there's a lot of data being collected, but then also like having to understand it and stuff like that. I think it'll be huge.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think, and in general for businesses, and actually this is something we talk about often with business owners, is there's this huge giant sea of data and so much that you can collect, and there's so many cool things that you can do with data. But actually, to the contrary, something we call heroin data or heroin decision making, which is like getting all that data in as like a heroin shot where you're like, I just want more and more and more and more. And so like I'm trying to track all these things. And as a small business, and we primarily target small, and you can call them medium-sized businesses, somewhere around 25 million a year up to probably about 200 is like our sweet spot. So depending on who you talk to, that could be a big business or medium, that's small, whatever.
Sure.
But anyways, with that amount of resources, like you may want to track as much as possible as you can, but it's just not possible, right? So what you run into is a situation like our buddy Matt. So, Matt's trying to collect all this marketing data, and he built this custom legacy CRM system. All right. And he's like, we're getting data from here. We're getting data from here. We're getting data from here. And he comes to the marketing team and he's like, basically what I want to know is a simple question. I need to spend more money to make more money, right? I need to spend more money on marketing. Where do I spend it? Okay. Marketing's like, well, we don't know. He's like, I got all this data that we're collecting. How do we not know that? Well, the problem is heroin data. Is like, yeah, as a fix, you're trying to go out there and get your data. You're getting your data, and you can't if you're not focusing on the things that really matter to trying to, again, back to what your strategy is, where you're going. If you're trying to focus on everything and not just the things that really move the needle, you end up missing things, or things start getting broken and you're not really paying attention to it. And that's actually what happened to him. The most important thing to answering that question was being able to track people when they come into your website and they fill out a form, right, saying like, hey, I'm interested. Well, there's a tracking mechanism by collecting a cookie, which is basically like identifying who you are based off of whatever, internet things. Let's just call it that. So that whole system that he had created basically stopped working for about 2 years. So it's like, we don't have 2 years of data now because we haven't been focusing on that thing particularly working. We're focusing on everything, pulling in everything. Well, so now what do you do? Well, the answer is you can't recreate cookies. So it's started again and start making decisions based off of what data you currently have. And so it's kind of fun. There's all these things out there that are really important, but at some point it's like you need to have priorities. And I listened to, and I don't want to plug another podcast on this podcast. I listened to a lot of them. One of the things I listened to yesterday was priorities. So priorities has become like a thing that people say is like, what are your priorities? Mm-hmm. And it's like, well, the actual origin of the word priority was to have one. Like there can only be one priority, right? Mm-hmm. And now we're like, well, we feel uncomfortable basically accepting like we just have one focus. So it's kind of the same in data. It's like, I have priorities. Well, if you have priorities, several handfuls, a whole list of priorities, it's like, then really none of them are that important.
Sure.
Right. So it's like you need a priority and focus on that. So I thought that was a good, kind of a good parallel. But man, there's so many cool things that you can do. But it's, in our opinion, it's like, man, focus on the ones that are really going to move the needle and really dial those things in. And don't get lost in like all the cool, fun things that you see out there on TikTok, that people are doing in the woodworking world. Is like, everything in walnut. Like you don't have to do all that.
No, I love it. No, I think and it applies like the focus on one thing. I've been reading a lot lately as well, and there was I think it was Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell.
Yeah.
He was talking about how like all of his employees or people that he delegates things to have like one number, like they're focused on one thing. So like if it's a salesperson, it's like your success is dictated, well, obviously on how much you close, but it's like to reverse engineer the success. It's like, well, statistically you have to make 50 outbound calls a month and book 10 meetings, and those 10 meetings turn into 3 pitches, and those 3 you might close 2, and then that's your quota or whatever. So it's like there's a lot of data, but then it just boils down to like every day I need to pick the phone up and dial 10 times.
That's right.
And I'm doing my job. So like that's the piece I think a lot of people need to know is like their number. It doesn't have to be a sales driven job either. It's like even your in-house accounting person. It's like, okay, what has to happen? Like you need to do payroll.
Yeah.
This person we need to pay our people. Like, okay, so like success means you're doing payroll twice a week. You're sending the spreadsheets to the leadership team, and you're having a zero inbox, so you're keeping up with like whatever those things are. But it's like one thing. It's like get payroll done. Like that's important. So,
and I think particularly for a business owner too, because and you can probably. You probably feel this is like there's so many things that we can prioritize as business owners, but it's like you just need to have that one that you can accomplish for that day. Otherwise, your day just like spirals into this shit show of like, I'm going to do this and this and this, this. So it's like focusing on that one thing and getting that done is really the only way that you have long-term success. And I'll just be honest with you, like our whole playbook, and we just choose to apply this to sales and marketing, but it really applies to I don't know, I think life in general, but anywhere within your business. Like our whole playbook is incremental changes. Like just do incremental changes and they'll add up to giant changes, right? And I think it particularly applies, I like, in marketing because, you launch different kind of marketing campaigns and you may be familiar with like A/B testing. So I'm going to do some sort of email campaign and I'm going to test this email versus this email and I'm going to slightly change them. Hopefully you're not just like, they're going to be entirely different and there's nothing that I can really compare them to. Hopefully it's just small incremental changes. Like I'm going to change the header of this email. It's the same body and I'm going to send them out to a good audience and I'm going to figure out which one's better. Pick that one. And now your next incremental change. Maybe I'm going to change this word in the body and of that email. And then I'm going to send those out and test them. So in reality, our whole playbook is that, and I do find this in business in general, is like a lot of people want kind of like, I just want this get rich quick thing. That hasn't worked for us. And I think that there's probably people out there that does work for. But I don't find that in business. In the businesses that I talk to, it's not a get rich scheme to be an entrepreneur, right? It's a lot of pain to really get where you're at, and it's just small incremental changes over time that end up getting you to that next place. And not all of them are going to be winners either, right? Like it could be a step forward and 2 steps back in some instances. But for me, like the biggest thing is they need to be intentional incremental changes. And like the biggest opportunities that I feel like you miss is you have an opportunity to test something, and this is my data side. So you have an opportunity to test something, but you're not actually doing it intentionally and you're not collecting data about it to really actually learn something from it. So, like you look at marketing in general, and I think marketers hate when I say this, but a decent conversion rate off of a marketing campaign is 4%. All right, and I have a finance background, and we can go into how I got here eventually. But my finance background is okay. So you have a 4% conversion rate. To me, that means there's 96% on the other side, right? 96% of your effort is not actually converting, right? So to me, that's kind of waste that you could potentially cut. Now, I'm being a little bit of tongue in cheek there about that 96% because it's really only waste if you're not learning from it. Right. So the idea is like, okay, you're spending all this money. Let's say you're spending $1 million. Well, whatever 96% of that is, $960,000. Yeah. So $960,000 of that million is just going in the trash can if you're not learning anything from it. Right. So how you learn something from it is you set up a system to be intentional where, okay, with this pot of money, I'm going to test this. And I collect that data and then I make a decision. And look, it's not sexy. but it's a way to be successful. And we find that with our clients. Generally 1% lift is not uncommon, where it's like, and 1% doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're talking big numbers, like it ends up being a lot, and you keep compounding those, right? So it's compounding on compounding on compounding, and you end up making a lot of money. So it's really, our whole system is being intentional, measuring, and making decisions from that, and just doing that over and over and over again until you find success. And I think that applies to a lot of different things, but we just choose to do sales and marketing, partly because that's, August's background was in that, but partly because I feel like for owners, marketing in general is like this giant black box, where it's like, I have no idea what's going on there. And oftentimes I kind of feel that way because I come from a finance background where, money is money. $1 plus $1 equals $2. Whereas in marketing, it's like, I know maybe 5% of the picture, but I got to make a decision because like, I don't know who this cookie is, or, where this person came from, or whether this is working or not. And so it really can be a black box for the owner. So it's like, okay, how do we unpack that so people can really understand what's going on in there? And then so we can then optimize it. Because like for American manufacturers, what we see is like they're comfortable with the production line. They're comfortable with making little changes here and there on making a particular product, making it a little bit better, right? So maybe we're making leather belts, and it's like, okay, we're gonna add another hole, or we're gonna add another hole here, or maybe we're gonna make it, fit more exact so that we're not having to trim that leather, whatever it is, right? So we're gonna reduce some of that wastage, and that's going to add to the bottom line. So that's something they're very comfortable with because they might have that engineering background. They created the thing, right? They know they could take it apart and put it back together 16 different ways. Marketing should be that way too. So that's how we treat it. But
sure. No, I love it. I think it'll probably benefit people too to jump back in your backstory, kind of talk about where you grew up, your childhood, kind of the journey that got you here. Because there's, as we mentioned, some fun memories from college, but also like football and the political science stuff and just all the things that kind of make you you. So tell me, like, where'd you grow up? What was your childhood like?
Yeah, that's a big question. So we kind of unpack that together. But, I think, where did I grow up? So I grew up in Southwest Iowa, just outside of Omaha. For people that aren't necessarily familiar, but Council Bluffs is just outside of Council Bluffs is where we grew up. And actually, my childhood in general, I was thinking about that is like in general, I had a great childhood. Like it was not without adversity though. So like when you ask the question, where are you from? Well, when I was 3 years old, our entire house burned down.
Holy shit.
So we lived, at that time we lived in Plattsmouth, Nebraska on a little golf course, and our entire house burned down. And then we relocated to Council Bluffs, not terribly too far from there. But I feel like that was kind of a microcosm of our whole life. And I do feel like, giving my parents credit in some aspects, like I feel like they live the American dream. So like they tell us stories of, when they bought their first house. Right now I'm in the process of, my wife and I are building a house, so we're interested in interest rates, right? And they're like, wow, interest rates right now, they're nothing. And it's like, wait, what? They were just like 3%, right? Or to some people, like 2.5%, which is crazy. Basically free cash at that point. And now they're like, what? 7, 6, 5. Hopefully this will be like a good staple where we can go back and it's like, I remember that time. But anyways, for them, when they bought their first house, it was like 16 to 24% was like their interest rate. It was just crazy.
Just put it on your Discover card, man. That's
that's the equivalent, right? Like that is the equivalent, is basically charging on the card. But anyway, so they bought their first house. It's like this little 500 square foot thing where it's, their bedrooms are basically like closets nowadays. And when they bought that house, they said, they moved in and they didn't have money to buy plates. So they went and they got I think it was a pizza or something, and they ate on the floor, was like their first meal. And, they're going on vacation to World of Fun, which is, a couple hours south of where we lived. And they would spend their last $10 on probably beer and a slice of pizza. And it's like, that's all the money we have for like the next 2 to 3 weeks. So like, that's it. And that's vacation for them. So, they started there, and throughout growing up, my dad worked his way up through a bank, ended up becoming a vice president, doing overseeing underwriting for banks, which is kind of funny because we were talking about interest rates. And my mom, she at the time, she was helping this commercial real estate guy basically with all of his deals. She was basically a paralegal is what she was. And it really kind of cultivated from there as we're kind of building this like middle-class life outside of Council Bluffs. About 2008 was like a very formative time for me in general, and I feel like how I kind of approached the world. My dad decided, honestly, he's like, I don't want to keep having to screw people to make money, that was the environment in 2008. He's like, how many houses can we put you in? You want a boat with that house, right?
Your credit score is 100.
Yeah.
Let's go for the bigger house here. It's like,
yeah. And it's like, we can get you into that if, we charge another half point on the origination. He was kind of prescient, and I think seeing the recession coming, which kind of makes sense given the position that he was in. I think he kind of foresaw that coming, but also at the same time, like he didn't feel good about how banks were making money and didn't want to keep doing it. So I think it was about 2006 he decided to have midlife crisis and go back to school and do something extremely lucrative, which was become a high school teacher. And at the same time, my mom, being a paralegal, she was same thing. She was like, well, I'm going to have midlife crisis, and instead of buying a Corvette, I'm going to go to law school. My brother, who was 2 years older than me, he was thinking about going to college. I was not too far out. And so it was like this kind of giant reset for us. And nobody was really making money. My dad was remodeling houses, and so that's what I grew up doing, remodeling houses and flipping houses. I hate painting houses now because of that. And when 2008 hit, I remember sitting at, the dining room table that we had, a little round table, oak table, and, the bill box is out on the table, and, the bills are spread out. And it's like, do we pay this bill? Can we pay this bill? And it's a serious conversation of like, do we file for bankruptcy? Is that our way forward here? And thankfully, we didn't end up having to do that, but like times were very tight. And we ended up getting out on the other side through this deal that my mom kind of put together prior to that 2008 with a guy that she was working with. My parents bought this property, this rental property. It was like seven or eight apartment buildings. And at the time, I think it was like a $2 million deal, which it's like, okay, wait a minute. You don't have money, but you're able to buy things. Well, that was the beauty of this deal that they put together. So basically, my mom was a commercial real estate broker on the deal. So she got paid the commission because she was representing her as the buyer and also representing the seller. So she was able to take home commission from that deal.
Nice.
And so
she got the commission and the building.
Yes.
Wow.
So her and my dad very creatively bought this property while taking money from the deal. Because with the commission, they were able to basically put money in their pocket and then also make whatever down payment they needed to make. So we basically rode that property through 2008. And then on the back end, we ended up having to sell it to basically make ends meet and go through school. So it was formative in some ways because I feel like I was at least, probably not co-pilot, backseat is probably the right way, but I was a backseat of like all this going on and like uneasiness. And 2008 was kind of a formative time, I think, in my childhood of like seeing all this, bad things, financial ruin kind of happen. And now, so like for myself is like, I'm a little financially conservative, and my outlook on life is a little more conservative in those respects, because it's like I don't want to have that conversation with someone of like, man, I got to start firing employees because I wasn't actually paying attention to X, Y, and Z, right? So it's like, how do we not do that? And I think I've evolved since, and like, I have friends ask me because I'm a budget guy. I do boring budget stuff for my wife and I. And they're like, okay, so like, how should we start cutting money? Because I want to start being able to afford other things. And it's like, to be honest with you, it's much more easy to make more money than it is to start trimming it. So like, that's my new outlook on life, I guess, that I've evolved over years. It's like, okay, how do we optimize what you're doing now? And instead of cutting it, like, let's make more. And that's a lot more fun than, cutting back on things. So that was my kind of formative upbringing, where I came from, and kind of up into college years.
Sure. Well, and I think the question I had just from you kind of sharing that, what did you learn about grit and also just like getting through the hard shit? Because most people, when they'd see that, they're either going to do the same thing or be like, or you're going to go the opposite direction. Like, how did that kind of change you before you left home? What did that do for you, for your outlook on like just life, career, and just kind of building a life for yourself?
To be honest with you, I'm not sure that, like, at the time, like, I would have just basically starting to go into college. At the time, I don't know that I recognized that it really had, a hold of me, or like a stamp on me, or have necessarily left a mark. But like from a grit perspective, like at least kind of growing up and participating in sports, I think is an aspect of this. Also growing up, needing to, kind of help out and work and whatever. It's like that developed the grit just in and of itself. And so you just come out of that, man, gritty. And I think I said this earlier, but I do believe this is, you either die from stress or it makes you better. And I find that also in business. It's like stress is the best motivator for you to do something. And let's take it out of even the business aspect. So like recently, I went to the doctor. I had some foot pain going on. And it's like, I hate going to the doctor. And it's like, okay, why'd you come in? And it's like, man, my foot hurts. And they're like, well, the great thing is like that stress actually made you respond to it because it's so sharp and painful. Right. And I do think that that's, also in business. It's like, if it hurts enough, you're going to do something about it. And either you're going to die from it and shut the shop doors, or you're going to grow and be even better and solve that particular stress. So I do think that that's something that, kind of help develop some grit, is just having that stress and adversity. And I think everybody has it in different ways. It probably looks entirely different. It may look different. But you end up learning from those. And when I got into college, just continuing with sports and kind of pushing that grittiness and the daily grind, like something that I love about, going to Simpson, doing D3 sports is like, Division III sports is basically like, well, it's like one step for me. It's like one step above flag football. Like anybody can play if they want. And that's, that's making a little bit light of the fact that, there's a huge commitment in actually doing sports in college, and it's not for everyone. So like our first year, I think we started with 60 guys, 60 freshmen.
On the football team?
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Thank you.
For the people that don't know, you played football, so
yeah. They might see it right
there. You
go. Anyway, so yeah, we started with 60 guys, and when I graduated, I think we were down to like 15 to 20.
And that's a pretty big class. Usually, there's like less than 10, maybe 5 that make it the full 4 years of Division III sports.
Yeah, it's an entirely different college life. Like you report to camp 2 weeks prior to anybody else going to school, going to college, and you're like, oh yeah, that's fun. I get to go to college early. Yeah, except for the fact that your day is basically wake up at 8 o'clock, work out, eat breakfast, watch video, maybe work out again, eat lunch, and watch video, and watch video, and watch video. Like you're literally, it's like from 8 to 9 o'clock, you're on football time, and that's it. And so you're doing that for 2 weeks, and then people start coming to campus, which is awesome because it's like you're around 120 dudes for like 2 weeks, and a lot of testosterone going on there.
Right.
Like you need some space with some normal people.
Totally.
But it's not. It's definitely not for everybody. Like even in the off season, like you're waking up at 5:30 to 4:30 or 5:30 based off of when your classes actually started to hit workouts and then go to your classes. And so it's not your normal college experience of, I don't know.
Sleep
Getting drunk
until
on
noon.
Tuesday.
Yeah, get drunk on Tuesday. Miss your class. The amount of people bitching about 8 a.m. classes. I'm like, you realize like there's so many people on this campus that have to wake up at like 4 to go work out, and you're bitching because you got to get up at 7:30 and roll out of bed and go to class. It's like, geez.
Yeah, it's like, oh, it's cold out. I don't want to go to class. And it's like, yeah, I've been out in the frigid weather. I actually almost quit. That was the one thing, is we got our first snow, and we got that brand new turf field out there, and it was so new that we got our first snow. They didn't know how to scoop it. So they were like, we have like a blade that we do the streets with, but we don't know how to use that to actually, we're afraid to hurt the turf. So they sent us out there, and we had like a foot of snow on top of the field, and we didn't know how to practice because we're like, we can't see anything. We don't even know where the turf is. So we go out there with shovels, and we're scooping the yard lines. And before practice started, Coach Davis was his name, big guy from Boston. Wonderful coach, one of the best coaches I think I've probably had. And before practice starts, he's like, all right, we're going to do, I think it's called six point drill. You get down on all fours and you basically dive in the snow. That's not a good way to start a cold practice, by being soaking wet, man. And it was like, I almost quit. I'm so glad I didn't though. So yeah, speaking of grit, I don't know, go out in the snow.
They always say go touch some grass. Like maybe just go lay in some snow. That'll wake you up, make you normal again.
Yeah.
How would you say your college experience was overall? Because I feel like, I mean, I think I was a freshman, you were a senior. We were like 4 years apart.
Okay.
I graduated in 2013, so you would have been.
I think
you probably, if you left in 2008, you probably would have went to.
No, I'm always bad at this game because I can't remember years to save my life.
Sure.
I don't think I think I graduated in 2015. So you may have been older than me actually, because I think I was 11 in high school. So 2008, I was getting ready, thinking about college.
Okay.
Maybe that's wrong though.
So if you graduated high school in 2011, you said?
I think so.
Okay, because I graduated I graduated high school in 2013. And then college in 2017.
Okay, yeah. So
you were
sure,
older
math
than me.
is right. We're just talking about different graduations.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't specify which school, but yeah.
Insert edit here where we enter right dates.
There you go. But I think, I guess back to the question, what would you say your overall experience was in college?
Yeah, I loved college. It was a good time for me. And I think that connection to football was a big thing, because you go to a new place, and I feel like the hardest thing for some people that I found in school was you're moving away from home for the first time, and sometimes that's hard for people. And one of the awesome things about football is like you don't have a choice. Like you're here 100% of the time, you don't get to go home. And I do think that that's helpful because it kind of like cuts the cord, because you can't go home. And I had some friends that they ended up dropping out or going to different schools, and it, you could see the progression. They'd go home on the weekends, and it's like, okay. And then, they start going home like every weekend. And it's like, all right, so you're not feeling very comfortable. And you would see those people transfer. So I think that was helpful. And then on top of that with football, you got the attachment of once you moved there, you knew 120 guys, right? That were all pretty good friends. You knew them well. So like, I think that was helpful, but moving on from just, the football experience, I did get some really great opportunities through Simpson to do some awesome things. One being student body president, which was helpful with the 120 guys that were already baked in votes for that. But at the time, and here finance comes back in. So at the time, Simpson was doing okay, but the small liberal arts private college scene was interesting. I think we had 36 schools in Iowa at the time. I still think we're kind of close. I don't necessarily follow along with these, but you were seeing some schools start to shut down because there was a real question about what is really the value of small liberal arts private colleges. And colleges, the colleges that we went to, so like Simpson, they buy into this value scheme where we have this high sticker price for you to attend the school here. And that's a sticker price. That's what they put on the windshield. But what they don't tell you is that every single person gets a discount. So that's not really their price. There was one person that was not getting a discount at Simpson when we were going there.
That poor sucker.
Yeah. No, actually.
They did not find the coupons in the back of the magazine.
Yeah, actually, he was on the GI Bill. So he was military. So the government was picking up his tab.
Sure.
Right? So you could say 100% discount, but then he served. So like really, he paid a lot for that, right? So, but so at the time, there was this big question of like, what do we do with the finance side? And I was always a proponent of, and I think I was probably wrong, to be honest with you. I was a proponent of let the students know what they're actually paying for. And there was this kind of movement at the time of this value reset or this sticker price reset. And I think one of the colleges in Iowa did do that. And I don't think they fared very well. So I was probably wrong, right? But anyway, so it was a great opportunity because it allowed me to get into positions where it's like you're having these, conversations with board of trustees members who are extremely successful about where the college should go, what should we do for pricing. You're even talking about like, do we need to trim down the athletics budget? Do we start doing less majors, doing more majors?
And you're a college student having these conversations.
I didn't know what the hell I was doing, right? Like, what the hell did I know? And to be honest with you, they probably, in one ear, out the other, just kind of, giving me a little bit of attention because why would they necessarily listen? What the hell do I know as whatever 20-year-old? Right. So I got involved in that. I also took an internship with the governor's office. Worked for Governor Branstad, which was a nice thing about being in Indianola, just south of Des Moines, is like it's just a stone's throw away to get to Des Moines. So all the opportunities that you have there is awesome. So I that's where kind of my political career, if you want to call it a political career, that's where my interest in politics started. Was working for Governor Branstad, and then after that, I also was I think they call them executive assistants or whatever on the floor, the Senate floor. So basically, if you're ever, watching the news at night and the Senate floor of the Iowa Capitol comes on the screen and they basically have the senators that, are yelling at their desk. And there's this little tiny itty bitty desk next to their desk. Yeah, that was where I sat. And my job was basically like take all these printed bills. The guy I worked for, he was a wonderful guy, maybe a little bit cuckoo, so I'm not going to say his name, but he was an awesome guy. He was old school in the sense that my job was basically they would print out bills and you'd have, hundreds of pages of bills. And like he just, he had like his version of FOMO of like, well, I need this printed out bill. So I would have to put tabs on each of the bills for numbers and put them in the little filing cabinet that I sat in front of. And so that was one of my jobs, very important, of course. And then also responding to emails. So he knew computers, but this was his preference of how he would respond to emails. I would print them off, slide it over to him. He would read it. He would use pen to write the email, slide it back to me, and then I'd type it up and send it. And
oh my gosh,
that's my job. But
tell this man there's voice to text. This changed his life forever. And just like, yes, please, thank you.
Yeah, I don't know if he's still around with us, but so that was how I got interested in politics. And it was a lot of, I make light of, the things that I did, but it was pretty cool. Waking up in the morning and going up to the Senate floor, and you have this beautiful view down. I don't even know what road that is in Des Moines.
Oh, the East Village area?
Yeah. You're looking over East Village and you're up on top of the hill, feeling all powerful and whatnot. That's not my views now. But it was a lot of fun, and that's what launched me actually into moving out to DC, kind of my interest in politics. So
sure. Well, and I don't want to graze past a huge piece of this story, which you got to interview the President of the United States, dude. I was there for that too. Like that's crazy. Because I think that was ironically the Donald Trump came to speak at our college, and I want to say that was where he announced he was running for president. He's like, oh, you guys, I just remember him saying this will be in the news in a couple of days, but I'm actually running for president. And I remember hearing people like kind of snicker around me. People laughed, and I'm like, oh shit, like this dude's been the president twice now. Like he showed everybody in here, didn't he? Like what was that experience like interviewing the president of the United States?
Yeah, that's I guess that's one of my claims of fame, I guess, if I had one.
Sure, your house burned down, you interviewed the president of the United States, and you dressed up in lederhosen for homecoming.
What else do you want? I got a golden doodle with 40 pounds and 5 horses, so, life's made.
There you go.
That experience was crazy. I think I kind of got chosen because of the fact that I got interested in politics, through the Republican scene, and it was me and 2 other guys. And to be honest with you, I didn't know what to think. I was like, this is kind of cool. I don't necessarily know why he's doing this, but probably political, probably trying to launch his career. And he shows up, man. He's a figure. He comes on stage. We were supposed to have some time beforehand, like 15 minutes to have, a conversation with him, probably lay some ground rules. Realistically, it was like, you don't really need it. Like the guy, he can speak about anything and just speak on and on and on. And we ended up not having the 15 minutes because he was late because something happened on his plane. I think the media or something scratched a table on his giant, really nice plane, which, so anyways, they were delayed. We go out on stage and it's like, all right, we're just going out there. And what I thought was funny is the microphones weren't working. So, we were like trying to figure it out live, which is like, okay, great. Not only did we not have a conversation, now the microphones aren't working and we're in front of, I don't know, like 500, 1,000 people. And he does his little bit about you're fired, the people with the microphone. So it was a really fun experience. And one of the things that I remember distinctly is he was starting to rag on small liberal arts private colleges. And honestly, he was probably correct. But at the time, it's like I'm student body president. I'm supposed to be repping our school and how great it is. And I do think small liberal arts colleges are great. I had a great experience, as I had talked about. So I tried to nail him down. And he's like, people that go to small liberal arts colleges, they graduate with more debt than when they go to, university. And I was like, well, actually, this is actually the statistics. I think at the time people were graduating with like 20,000 or 25,000 in debt was kind of the average, which was actually less than if you went to Iowa State or Iowa. I don't know if that's still the case. And, it's funny because like I see him on interviews on TV and where the reporters like try to actually nail him down. It's like, yep, I had that exact same experience where I tried to channel him there and he's like, I did the weave and he's off, doing his own thing. And no one gave a crap what I had to say, right?
Sure. You're trying to trap him and he just like swerves. Yeah. Like I'm out of here.
Yeah. So it was a really fun experience. It was definitely a highlight of the college career.
Absolutely. No, and I just thought that was kind of a wild touch in because then that happened. And then my other like small claim to fame was I met Bill Clinton because Hillary Clinton was there too. And I was walking to my 8 a.m. at like 7:45 in the morning. And there was this dude just sitting on a bench by College Hall. And it's kind of misty that morning. So I didn't really know who he was. I thought it was like somebody. But then I noticed like 3 guys in suits around him. Like there was one right next to him and then somebody like over by Carver and then one over by like the music building just standing there in suits. And I'm like, I looked over, I'm like, holy shit, that's Bill Clinton. And he's just sitting there like just enjoying the morning by himself. And I'm just like walking and I kind of walked within a voice of him and I was just like, hey, Bill. And he's like, hey, how you doing? And then I learned later that Bill Clinton has a photographic memory, so he probably remembers talking to me.
Oh, so, probably.
Could be. Well. I mean, we didn't really do anything besides I waved at him, so I thought probably not going to stick in his mind. But that's crazy, though. So you do the kind of political startup stuff here in Des Moines. Talk to me about when you decided to go to D.C. What was kind of that process like? Because you got your master's in D.C. as well? Okay.
Yeah. So when I graduated from Simpson, I was a philosophy major in Simpson. Political science minor, mathematics minor, should have gotten the major in mathematics. And I did that originally. I really liked philosophy because it's the whole idea of philosophy is you're kind of questioning and you're good at asking questions. You're terrible at answering them, but you're good at asking them. And so you're kind of questioning the world, which I really like, kind of that, that idea of like, why do we do things this way? So I really found that captivating. And overall, like I thought I wanted to be a lawyer originally. And so what I found out is people with philosophy majors actually do really well on the LSAT because of that logical system of thinking. Philosophy and math are actually very similar to each other. And come to find out, my mother-in-law, she's got like 2 PhDs in math and philosophy, which is kind of funny. She's way smarter than I am. But they actually work very well together because of that logical set of thinking. And so I was like, all right, cool. I can do philosophy and then go be a lawyer, and that's how I'll make money because no one makes money in philosophy. So I was fine with accepting that major. But once I got interested in politics, I was like, okay, well, I was planning on going to some sort of form of school after the fact. My mom, as I had mentioned earlier on, decided to be in her midlife crisis, decided to go back and be a lawyer herself, and she kind of scared me away from it. Okay. She's like, the only thing you're going to get with a law degree is an addiction to wine.
Sure, become an alcoholic and never see your family, something like that.
Yeah, which is not the case. My mom has a ton of bottles of wine, but but I do see her often, which is good. But anyway, so she kind of scared me away from it. And honestly, she was probably right for this. But I was trying to figure out, what I wanted to do. And I was interested in politics, and, philosophy degree, though valuable, is worthless on the street. So it's like work at Starbucks, work over concrete. I did that for a couple of summers, or go to a next version of school. And to be honest with you, what I really wanted, being from small town Iowa, I wanted to be kind of, I wanted some sort of affirmation that, I could do better things. Because to be honest, and trying to get out of my Midwest humility and into my East Coast elitist attitude is like I didn't feel like at the time in high school and college, I didn't feel like I was challenged. School wasn't that hard for me, and philosophy in general. It's kind of like if you can wax on about whatever the professor wants you to do, like you got the recipe, you're getting an A.
If you had John Pauly just be like, it's bullshit, and he's like, hey, it's all bullshit. That was his favorite line in his classes. So.
Yeah, no, I really like Pauly. He's a nice guy, but that's just kind of how I felt, and I don't know, that's not necessarily for everybody. But anyways. So I was looking for some sort of affirmation that, I could actually cut it in the real world. So one of my criteria was I wanted to go to a top 10 school in the nation for whatever I do. I'm interested in politics. All right, masters of public policy or public administration, they're sometimes the same. That's what I decided I was going to get, and I'm going to find a school in the top 10. Well, I took my GRE, got a pretty good score, started putting applications out. I think it was like the University of Michigan. They're like, no, we're too good for you. So I didn't get in there. But I applied to some schools in D.C., and it made sense to me. I was like, where are your best schools going to be? Well, D.C. makes sense because you got all the politics out there. And I got accepted into Georgetown and George Washington. And I pulled up, the U.S. News rankings because I wanted to go to a top 10 school. And GW ended up being higher than Georgetown, so that's what I picked.
Interesting.
Yeah, we were like, GW I think was like 6th at the time in the nation for public policy. And what's funny is, to complete that story, so I got offered like a scholarship for that master's program to be basically an assistant for the program. I can't remember what they called him at the time, but part of me doing that program was I got involved in those U.S. News rankings, and it's just a flyer that they send out to all the different schools, and they all kind of rank each other, and there's all politics that are played. So like people will send out advertising, schools will send out advertising to other schools, basically being like, look how great we are, so that they can score well on the U.S. News to get idiots like me that are trying to get in the top 10 schools, right? So like come to find out, like the rankings are kind of bullshit. But that's so that's how I ended up going out to choosing GW. And so, I moved moved out to DC. It was pretty much right after I graduated, and I was pretty lucky. One of my uncles decided to fly the roost or fly the coop. I don't know, whatever that adage is. But anyways, he decided to get out of his hometown and kind of do his own thing. So he had moved out east, and he lives outside of Richmond, which is not terribly too far, depending on the traffic. Come to find out, too far from DC. So it was a nice way for me to go out there. I got to fly out there, live with him for a summer, and I pretty much moved out with 2 boxes. I had 2 boxes of stuff, and that was it. And my job was I had 2 months to find somewhere to live. And it was a whole experience. I love the guy to death. He'd probably agree with me. He's a little bit of a redneck, being from where we are. And so he's an X-ray technician for like inspecting welds and things is what he does in real life. And he's got this giant truck. It's like a dually extended bed. I'm a Ford guy, so it's a crew cab, which is the 4-door kind of situation. Mm-hmm. So he's got this giant truck, and his wife at the time was like, you need to take that truck up to DC because it's the only reliable one out of the 3 that he has for some reason. And, because of his job, he wasn't home. He was kind of traveling around. So here I am driving up to DC for literally the first time that, I was by myself in this giant truck trying to find apartments. Okay. I get into DC proper, and I got this giant truck, and I'm trying to go to this house to look at the room, see where the roommates are, yada, yada. And I can't find anywhere to park on the street because it's like 3 parking spaces. This is what I need to get this thing in there. So I'm like parking like multiple miles away just to get there. And so that was my first experience. I walked into the first place, and I don't know what I expected, but it was like it was like your prototypical frat house in a movie. Was like, that was the place. And I was like, okay, so this is like $1,200 a month. I get a room in this place. They literally had a door that they took off of the room that I was renting that they were using as the beer pong table that they had to clear off while I walk in, and there's beers all over the place. I was like, okay, I don't think this is the environment that I'm going for here. I'm not going here for undergraduate. So I left that knowing, okay, that's not the place. I got a few others that I need to look at, but first I need to figure out what to do with this giant truck that I have, right? So I go to, it's called Crystal City. It's on the Virginia side of DC, and I had a hotel over there. So I'm like, all right, I'm just going to go in the parking garage, and I'm going to park this thing. Well, it's an underground parking garage. It's on a busy street. You kind of turn, you go down. And I get to the turnstile or whatever the raisey lowery thing is. The truck's too tall. Oh. So I'm trying to back out. There's a huge line of cars behind me, and everybody's honking. And it's like, okay, all right, Alex, welcome to the city, man. Like, oh my God, get your big ass truck. Like, go get it. Yeah. It's like, go back to Virginia. It's like, I'm not even from here, man. So it was an experience, but I actually found a place in Crystal City, probably because it was close to where I could actually park my vehicle. And I had 2 roommates. I bought the furniture off the guy in front of me. So I had my 2 boxes, a bed that was on the floor, a really shitty desk. And man, I'd lived my life there for a couple of years. And the whole experience was different. Like, you go from, here in Iowa, oftentimes epicenter of health, you drive to your mailbox at the end of your driveway. To now, if I wanted to get groceries, I had a backpack, and I'd walk a mile to the grocery store, clip it onto my bag, and walk a mile back. And it's like, I'm a foodie. I like to cook. It's like you don't make a lot. You can't make a lot of different types of food when like that's your way of acquiring groceries, right? And then I had a little mini fridge, and my uncle thought it was important that I have Costco membership so I could get like 1 bag of spinach from Costco and fill up the entire fridge. And that's like, I'm eating spinach for the next month. So yeah, it was it was rough beginnings, but it was also very formative. Just kind of seeing the world a little bit differently than feeling comfortable at home and kind of getting shook up, getting a little stressed to kind of figure out the world. So it was, yeah.
Did you end up working in DC after you graduated for a little bit, like on Capitol Hill, or
yeah?
Did you dabble in that, or did you come back to the Midwest with your tail tucked because it was too scary?
I did work out in DC, and I had some really cool experiences, and that's one of the things I kind of lucked out in me being an idiot and choosing my school. It was actually a very good school, and since where it was located, there was a lot of opportunities, and so I got to do a lot of things. And there was times where I'm like, "You're letting an intern do that?" So I'll give you a couple of examples. And so while I was in school, they had a lot of connections because it's just a great school. So, I worked for different offices. I worked for what's called the Government Accountability Office. Used to be General Accounting Office. Basically, what they call themselves is their Congress's watchdog. They do these reports on things are not working well, or this is how you can improve. I think their most famous report is like waste, fraud, and abuse. It's something you read before you if you want to go to sleep at night, it's something you read. All of the reports are that way. They're kind of dense. And that was a really cool experience because I got put on this team that was just like in general involved with the Department of Transportation and reviewing how the Department of Transportation is put together. And it's kind of fascinating to think about because the Department of Transportation, they have so many different facets of how we get around. And it's also interesting because you have the FAA, which is the Federal Aviation Administration. I'll try not to be the typical politician and just throw acronyms. But anyways, with the FAA, you have like 6,000 people that are employed. So it's like this whole agency within an agency. And there's this infighting of like, we're twice the size of the rest of the whole, department. Like, we're our own thing. We should be able to do our own thing. So it was kind of an interesting project that I got to work on. And at that time, it allowed me to talk to people that were like extremely high up in the department. And that was one of my things that I was like, okay, you're letting an intern that doesn't really know anything kind of get involved with this. So I went from that, and my immediate next thing, and this was even more like, whoa, was working for, it's called OIRA, Office of Information and Regulatory Affairs. What they do is any significant regulation over $100 million, they review it, okay? And they decide, yes, this can be implemented or not. So what is a regulation? A regulation is basically they do all this stuff up on Capitol Hill. They pass bills and basically say, we're not going to do this or we're going to do this. Well, that's fine and dandy, but there's like this whole implementation aspect of like the like 10 words that you use to say like, we're going to make roads better. Well, that turns out not to be sufficient for actually making real decisions. So like you need something that really like puts the wheels to the ground. So Information and Regulatory Affairs, they review when the agencies come out with these regulations that are saying like, this is how we're actually going to implement this. So like, here's different road standards. That was one of the more boring things I did, which was reviewing road standards. Like this much is a fault versus this much is a crack. Like, so like very boring stuff like this. But the coolest thing that I got involved with there was at the time, I don't know if you remember, there was they were talking about banning Samsung batteries. I think Samsung was pretty on the forefront of using lithium-ion batteries. So they're talking about banning Samsung batteries on airplanes. So you couldn't take them because what was happening is they were catching on fire. So there was two instances where planes, I think one was over Russia and the other one, I don't remember where the other one was, but there was instances where these planes were basically just like evaporating in the air. Well, what was happening was lithium batteries were being packaged on these pallets and they were being transported on commuter planes. And what would happen is the forklift driver would accidentally pierce some of the batteries while he was loading. So basically he would miss, right? And hit the batteries with forks. Turns out that's not good. And it's particularly not good for lithium-ion batteries because they would do this thing called thermal runaway, which is a battery would start spewing out it's gases, and there would be heat that was created. And then other batteries would start doing it. So you have this basically giant bomb of lithium ion batteries, and they would catch on fire eventually because so much heat was being produced. A plane, I think, has 3 different basically suppression systems in its cargo bay for like putting out a fire. So this is part of the reason why they're safe. Turns out thermal runaway evades all 3. So none of those suppression systems are sufficient for putting out this fire.
Light the plane on fire, right?
Yeah. So that's why they would basically just burn from within, and the whole plane would just basically disintegrate in the air from this massive and very hot, intense fire. And so anyways, the regulation at the time was like, can we let people bring batteries on planes? Or more importantly, can we ship batteries on planes? And so the thought was like, let's stop shipping batteries on planes because people feel unsafe with that happening, which was rightfully so. And so like our job at OIRA was, okay, like, does this make sense? And does it make sense from a monetary perspective? So you do what's called like it's called a cost benefit analysis. So you line up all the costs and say like, well, if we don't ship batteries on planes, here's all the costs that will accumulate. What are all the benefits? Right. So if we don't ship them on planes, we may save lives. There's a thing called value of the statistical life, VSL, which is basically the government assigns a value of what you and I's life is worth, depending on which agency and which one they accept. It's like 165 million up to $1 billion is basically what our life is worth, according to the government. So when we're reviewing that regulation, it was mind-boggling because it's like there's things that you don't even think about, and you're trying to estimate, all of the different costs. And there was a couple of them that were kind of interesting, which is like pacemakers. So pacemakers, a lot of them at the time were being made in Puerto Rico. And when you make a pacemaker, you basically put the battery in it, you seal it, and then you ship it. Well, the cheapest way to ship is from a plane if you want it with any sort of speed. So it's like, okay, this regulation will stop you from being able to do that. Okay, so now you start taking away supply of pacemakers. How many people you're going to estimate may die because of that? Another one was people in very remote parts of the world, particularly in Alaska, that they get their mail via plane. Well, there's defibrillator vests that basically your heart, like if it goes into arrhythmia, which is like it's out of rhythm or whatever fast. I don't know. I'm not a medical doctor. But they need like battery packs that they wear on them to shock themselves back into life. So it's like, okay, you can't ship batteries via planes. Right. First of all, they don't have batteries at all because of that now. And B, like they don't have their defibrillator vests, so they likely will die.
Sure. So there's just like this whole web of, if you do this, there's all this stuff that could happen. Yeah. If you do this, all this like trying to regulate that. That makes sense.
Yeah. So it was such an interesting internship because, you're put in these positions where like you're making these actually really big decisions. And the first day that I walked in there, they basically gave me a list of all the regulations they're reviewing. And they're like, which one do you want? And I'm like, what do you mean? I don't even know what I'm doing here. Like, they're like, no, you're going to run some of these by yourself. And I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing. And one of them was like, I got the head of like the DOT and the head of the environmental agency like arguing with each other over this regulation. And it's like, my job is to be mediator between them. And it's like,
and you're an intern?
Yeah.
Maybe we should have like a lawyer present or somebody like, that's
anybody? Is there a parent in the room?
Sure.
So yeah. But anyway, so I had those cool experiences. I also worked on Capitol Hill, actually where I met my wife. So I guess this is my opportunity to plug that. Asked my wife this morning. I was like, I'm going to be on Ryan's podcast. What should I talk about? She flippantly said, we should talk about how great I am. And I was like, okay, so here's my opportunity. Her and I met working for Senator Grassley on the Hill. That was the first job that I talked about, making $34,000 a year. Senator Grassley is very financially conservative, so you don't make big bucks answering phone calls for him, unfortunately.
Well, he's probably a great wage back when he was your age, right? Like, was he 96 or something like that? I'm sure. Back in the early 1900s, that was a great wage. So
yeah, and I should be thankful for just the fact that I got to work there. It was a great office. He's personally, a great guy. But he has this crazy statistic, which is like the number of marriages that started, like originated in his office. And I think we were like 26 or something like that, like his 24th or 26th. I don't know. There's new newspaper articles out there about it.
He's probably got a whole like thing on his mantle of all the framed wedding pictures from all the people he's set up over the years.
He's very proud of it. And in reality, he should be. And one of the things that I like about his office is he prioritizes hiring Iowans. Which when you move out to somewhere, and again, like you got your 2 boxes and your giant truck until you have to return it, you're looking for people that, have some values like you. I think one of the first classes I had, I was talking to these people that, East Coast elitists, whatever, that grew up out on the East Coast entirely. And I was having a conversation with her. Oh, where are you from? I'm from Iowa. I got my, long blonde hair like I do now. And my, what are those jeans that everybody, around here wore at the time that is just like completely out of fashion? Buckle jeans. That's what they were.
Oh, sure.
I had my buckle jeans. And it was like, I look like nobody else out there. It was like, what the hell is that? And she's like, I've never been on that side of the mountains. And I'm like, wait a minute, let's unpack this a little bit. Like which mountains? Like there's 2 ranges. Generally, people don't talk about in between the mountains, but you mean like literally those mountains over there? Like you've never been on that? Because there's a lot that's over there. Like in California, like not even talking about the Midwest. There's a lot over there. I've never even been on that side of the mountains. It's like, wow, that's a different mindset. Mm-hmm. But anyway, so you move out there. And you're looking for people that share some similar values to you that you can kind of relate to and have conversations with. And I think my wife, not my wife at the time, but she was one of the first people that I think kind of got me involved in, in the friend group, kind of reached out and started having conversations with. And for me, that was a life changer because it's like, man, you're struggling out there to meet friends. It's hard when you move to, a new place, let alone a big city. Like it even feels like, there's more people out there. So you would hope that, you just luck out and find a couple friends, but it almost feels harder because it's like, there's so many people out there. It's like hard to find just like, it feels like there's more pressure, but anyway, she kind of got me involved with some of the friend groups out there, and like the whole Grassley office is like Iowan. And putting politics aside, like just growing up here, you have different values. You can all relish the fact that weather sucks outside of those 4 months, right? And so we just kind of have a different outlook on life, and it's something that I really, when you move somewhere else that has different values, and you kind of look back at what you do have here, and it's like we have some really good stuff. We have nice people. We have beautiful landscapes. We don't all sit on top of each other. You're not living in an apartment with 14 different people spending so much money. So that's something that I really liked. So yeah, I worked in his office, and then from there, once I graduated, I had kind of different opportunities that I could chase, but I got really interested in budgeting. And again, I think this kind of goes back to my childhood 2008 crisis. Is like, man, the money thing makes sense to me. And one thing that I like, particularly in politics, and I think it also applies, I don't think it does apply to businesses as well, is like if you unpack the finances, you can really follow what's going on in a business, because like where the money's spent, that's where the priorities are. That's it. And so I worked for the state of Maryland. I got hired again in another position where I was like, really, you're going to put a newbie on this? I was the staff economist for Governor Hogan's budget shop, which what that basically meant is based off of their budgeting system, they had what's called a tribunal. So you have 3 different organizations that get to put an estimate in for how much money they can spend. The governor has his own representative. There's an independent agency in the legislature. The governor's people, me, that's it. I never forecasted revenue in my life, never been an economist, was not trained to be an economist. And here I was, man, coming up with like $9 billion revenue estimates to figure out like, this is how much money we should spend for the state of Maryland. So yeah, I was doing that, and I was managing a few $100 million in budgets, and it was a lot of fun. But it was also kind of the start of where I got jaded on politics, I think, a little bit. Yeah, so I think working for the state of Maryland, it is where I started getting, my mindset had changed, and I wasn't as interested in politics because I was finding things in the government and just like decisions being made, not what I wanted to necessarily happen or not what the data said, right? And that bugs me internally because it's like you find this, it's supported by the data, and yet you make a decision that's just not right in my mind. And so like, there's a couple examples of that. One being like I put together this economic analysis on like how much money should we be spending on advertising for the lottery. So come to find out, the state runs a lottery. Most states run a lottery. It's a moneymaker for them. A lot of people, let's just say a lot of different people in the government when they're thinking about the budget, like the lottery, because it allows them to take money that they're getting from the lottery and put it into schools. Like, who doesn't love spending more for kids? Like, as a politician, you'd love to say that, right? It's either I'm going to put money back in your pocket or I'm going to spend more money on the kids. Who could argue from that? So the lottery allows you to do that. And so at the time, they really liked doing this like gimmick where it was, we're going to spend more money on advertising, lottery advertising, and then we're going to assume a revenue increase because we're advertising more. And then because we can do that, we can spend more money. Which is like, that's not great. So my task was to determine whether or not there was diminishing returns on this advertising spend. I did this analysis. I did some really cool stuff. Looked at whether or not like weather affects whether people buy lottery tickets. My analysis said like, yeah, actually, when it rains out, people don't buy lottery tickets. When it's 8 feet of snow, people don't leave their houses.
You're not going to risk your life to go get your scratch off. Well, some people might, but yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So then I did this analysis, put it together. My boss was like, oh, this is great. And then it runs up the flagpole and it's like, nah, we're not going to do that because if I spend more money on advertising, I can spend more money on other things because I can assume that there's this return. And it's like, okay, so first of all, why did we do the analysis if we knew that was going to be the answer?
Just wasting all your time.
We weren't actually interested in the science. It's a gimmick that allows you to spend more and say that it's not costing you anything. Come to find out, I looked a few years after the fact, and it did not pan out for them. I don't think. So that was one of the things I also got sicked on. It turned out like it seemed like I was kind of the bulldog that they wanted to like sick on things that are like, this is something that we want to be fixed. And like, you're the one that's going to turn the screws on it. And part of it was the office in general, because generally Maryland is a relatively liberal state. Now I'd say much more liberal, perhaps than when I went there, but the office wasn't as like fiscally conservative as I was. So a lot of the people that are working there are more focused on like, how do we deliver services and optimize services? Whereas like my upbringing is like, I want to make sure we're spending as little as taxpayer dollars as we can. So that was my outlook on life, and agencies hated that. And I don't blame them, because like it's like probably at the time my outlook was, I want to cut. And so that's,
you're the stuffy finance guy, and they're like, but we have big ideas that are just going to like pay themselves, right?
Yeah. And so I would get kind of stuck on these things like, figure this out. We're trying to figure this out. And one of them was this agency was collecting money for some particular types of taxes, and it turns out that they were allocating it in like incorrect locations. And so like we had found this pot of money that was just basically sitting in a bank account is what it basically was. And it's like 70, $80 million, which in government speaks, not a huge amount, but like when you're thinking about it from a taxpayer perspective.
To misplace that is kind of scary.
Yeah, like at least someone didn't steal it or put it in their pocket.
Sure. Think of the freaking interest on that just alone.
Right?
Stick it in a high yield savings, 5% on 70 million. It's like, holy shit.
Yeah. So it was cool. I was like, mission accomplished. We figured out where this money is. And the thought was, okay, now we can take that money and either actually put it where it's supposed to go. I can't remember where it was, where it was supposed to go, or we can put it in the budget and spend it because we collected and spent it. That's, what they wanted to do. And I think at some point in time, a decision was made that, it may not have been politically palatable to recognize that money was there. So we didn't want to do that particular year. Now, I don't know what I'm sure they've straightened it out. But it's like you really see politics at its finest. And, I go from that to, thinking about manufacturers in the U.S. It's like, okay, in my opinion, and it's not really an opinion, it is fact, is that government doesn't produce anything. Like government in reality is a redistribution mechanism, taking money from people, redistributing it to things. Now that sounds bad, and you're like, well, mega conservative is probably going to apply to that. That's actually not true. The redistribution is important for things like we like roads, right? Like we like quality roads. I don't like the fact that every bridge, it seems like around Des Moines is pulled out right now, and the traffic is awful. But like that's really what the government does. They take money from things, they redistribute it to priorities that we're supposed to have as collective as the nation, and they provide utilities. And then it spirals from there, and we do other things, right? So like education, and you could argue like states' responsibility is education, but the feds are pretty heavily involved. So in reality, it's like, okay, if that's your outlook on life, and that's what I take as fact, is like that's pretty much what government's job is. They're not a net plus in creating new things, right? Whereas like a American manufacturer that's working their butt off and small town Iowa making these beautiful things, like they're actually creating something. They're taking raw materials and making something that gives us happiness. And like that to me is like way much more fun than I'm going to take money from these people and put it into this, which also is very important. Like providing those services is very important. But it's just not my plot in life that I want to be involved with. So that's kind of how I got out of seeing that side of politics, and then also kind of having that realization to me that that's kind of how I see the government. It's like, okay, let's refocus.
Sure. Was it hard for you to give up politics and go into this new area? Like, what was that journey like for you? Just to, I guess you spent years and years building this, education experience to just not leave it all at the wayside, but pivot away from it.
Well, I say from like actually paying the bills aspect, I was pretty lucky that I had chosen to be interested in the budget and finance side, so I could leverage that to actually get a real job. Because it's not like I'm an expert in bureaucracy. It's like I can do the numbers thing. So I ended up leaving politics, coming back to Des Moines, and working in a healthcare. Well, they were a Medicaid provider. And I was a financial analyst for them. So from like a physical standpoint, like I could get a paycheck, which that was nice. From a personal perspective, like I'm still involved in that environment. A lot of my friends are involved in that environment, and I still stay in touch with it. I'm just not like, I don't want my 100% of my life to be, be politics. And there's aspects of it that I really don't like, which is like, in order to get ahead in the political scene, it's like, you got to step on somebody else. And like, that's not fun. It's like, wouldn't you rather just like everybody, be able to work together and pull everybody else along? Like, the rising tide lifts all boats. And you don't, in my experience through the different positions that I had, and, you can argue I just didn't have good experiences. So it's just fine. I'll take that. But in my experiences, it's like, that's just not how it works. And so it's not as fun. So I still have some roots in it, but like, I feel like I've moved on.
Sure. No, that makes total sense. We'll take a pause here and jump into your lightning round, give you a break from your life story here. How you feeling about trivia? Are you well versed in trivia? No peeking at the questions here.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, first question. We'll give you a softball. How many stripes are on the U.S. flag?
I get this one backwards. It's either 11 or 13. I think it's 11.
Okay, final answer?
Uh-oh. You have to look on your face like it's not. All right, let's hear it.
It's 13. Oh. Why, though? Why is it 13?
Does it have relations to the number of colonies? Mm-hmm. There we go.
Yeah, 13 colonies. You got it.
You're going to make me look like an idiot, aren't you?
No, it's okay. Well, we're just keeping you sharp here. Sports fan?
Yeah. I like Nebraska football.
Okay.
You got a Nebraska football question on there?
I do not, no. And if I did, it'd probably be a Hawkeyes football question from Southeast Iowa. So.
Yeah, we're going to fail.
You've been following Kate and Clark at all? Any of that?
I follow along a little bit.
Okay, a little bit. Okay.
Yeah, she's awesome. She's great for the sport.
Absolutely. How many WNBA teams are there?
Oh. Well, there's 36 hockey teams in the NHL, so that's going to be my reference point. Let's say 18.
Close.
Okay.
13.
Oh,
close.
A little overestimate.
They had 12, and then they just expanded another team. There's like an expansion team, and then they're apparently going to be to like 20 teams by 2030.
Okay.
It's like 5 more years. So
good for the WNBA.
Yeah, it's blowing up. So how many quantity are in a baker's dozen?
In a baker's dozen? Well, it's like a farmer's dozen. It's like 13, so we'll go with 13.
13's it. Yep.
There we go.
12 for the dozen, and then 1 for the baker. They got to eat it and make sure there's extra.
Okay.
So yeah, I randomly asked you 3 questions in a row. The answer is all 13. You didn't pick up on that.
I didn't see the train.
That's similar to the same things, but yeah. Okay. Moving on here, we got another question. You mentioned you were working for Chuck Grassley, and he does his tour every year to go to all the counties. How many counties are in the state of Iowa?
99. That one's easy.
There you go. Ding ding. You got it. Yep. Can you name 10 different counties in the state of Iowa out of the 100 or 99? Excuse me.
10 of them. I feel like I just got to pick a name, and well, I grew up in Pottawatomie County.
Okay.
One of the largest counties in the state of Iowa. We'll go with Dallas, Polk County, Story County, Adair, Fremont, Poweshiek. Did I say Story?
You did say Story. Yeah. What's Indianola in? What county is Indianola in? I thought it was going to be a gimme. We were there for 4 years.
Yep.
Warren County?
Okay. No, I don't have that one.
Okay.
Is Decorah actually a county? No.
I don't think so.
Okay. I didn't know if that wasn't. I feel like, oh man, this is where trivia sucks, especially live, is like.
You got
right
9? 8 or 9?
Yeah, 8
That's
or 9.
Good. That's pretty good, I'd say.
I know Mills County. There's another one. There's 9. I said Dallas. Well, that's close.
You made it. Almost there. Last question. It's kind of a trick question, but not really. Who wrote the Declaration of Independence?
Who wrote it? That is a trick question, and I'm trying to remember because I know the answer to this because I've been in his house.
You've been in this person's house that wrote the Declaration of Independence.
Yes, I believe so.
Whose house was this? Do you know the name of the house?
It's up the street from Benjamin Franklin's house in Mount Pelier. What is his name? Oh, this is annoying. Give it to me.
One of our founding fathers, of course, Thomas Jefferson.
Yeah.
Yep. But if you want to be really literal, his scribe wrote it because he had really good handwriting. Similar to your case where he's writing stuff and then you type it out. That's kind of what he's doing.
So the cool thing, I believe, about his house, I think it's his house.
You're at Monticello, right?
Yeah. So, and I believe it was Thomas Jefferson. So you're sitting in his study, and it's a beautiful plantation, I guess is probably what it was. But it's this beautiful brick house, and you're sitting in his study, and I think he's got this big circle window from what I remember. And you're sitting there, and you're looking right out into the Appalachian Mountains. And one of the thoughts, because at the time, right, you don't really know what's on that side of the mountains. You still may not know what's on that side of the mountains. But his thought, I believe, was I believe he was a big proponent of like slavery needs to end, and like there needs to be some sort of reparations or something for that at the time. So his thought was, we're going to give all of the slaves all of the land on that side of the mountains. Which is really interesting to put yourself in that position where it's like, if you could think about the world in which you have no idea what's there, and then you're just sitting in your chair staring at the mountains and you're like, that seems about appropriate, is that side of the mountains. It's very interesting to think about people's mindsets and like how your limited perspective affects like what's appropriate, what's not appropriate. Obviously that didn't, didn't happen. And we found a lot on that side of the mountains, but it's crazy to think about. But anyways, that was just my adage to maybe hopefully make myself feel better about not coming up with the name.
Well, you passed the gauntlet. There you go.
Nice.
Appreciate the time.
Thank you.
So you passed the official gauntlet of questioning. So good job on getting through that. Sorry if I threw you some softball or some curveballs there. So
yeah, I don't know if passed is the right word, but we can always strive for better.
There you go. I think switching the conversation back to data, I know we talked about this earlier in the episode here, but I wanted to kind of get your input on some of the impact that AI is having on data in general in terms of sifting things better, putting models together, some of the things that you might have to do manually that maybe not be the most fun things. Mm-hmm. What's kind of your outlook on AI's impact on data and where you think it's going to go in the future? Yeah,
I have a very positive outlook for AI just in general. And I do think that it has great applications right now. In fact, we use it. In fact, if you're not using it, you're probably not doing it right. But there's also important caveats for like current day, which is like it can be wrong. And so like we do get a lot of people that are interested in like, hey, I hear that AI is really important. Like, how do we implement it in our business? And it's like, okay, where are you at currently? It's like, well, we got data all over the place. We got data and, spreadsheets and some data over here. None of it reconciles, yada, yada. And it's like, okay, so you don't really have the framework of actually using AI in your business. So like, let's start with, getting ready to get you there. So I do think sometimes it's a little bit overplayed. And I think, on the con side, what I worry about is like, if it's wrong, how big of an issue is that for your business? Right. And so where I see the applications currently is like, it's a good thought partner. And I think and I'm blanking on the name of this book, but there's a book that's, is it AI for Leaders or something like that? But anyways, basically the whole premise of the book, not to spoil it, if you want to go out and read it now, given that I don't even have the title for you, the whole premise of it is basically use AI as a way to kind of bounce ideas and improve upon your ideas and ask questions and have it ask questions of you for you to kind of think through kind of that whole thought process. Like, I think that's a spectacular use of AI as like, it's basically like you have another one of you that's just there to ask you questions. Like, I think that's great. When you get to the point of like, I need to know what this number is. So like in sales and marketing, there's like 2 mega metrics for us: lifetime value and cost of acquisition. Basically, lifetime value is how much you can expect when you bring somebody in the door. How much money are they going to spend? Cost of acquisition is how much does it cost to bring somebody in the door. Why those 2 metrics are awesome is because if you compare them to each other, and the lifetime value is, let's call it a 2-to-1 ratio, you're growing, which is good. It answers the question of how much money can I spend in order to make my business profitable. So like if your thought is like, well, I'm just going to throw data at it and it's going to give me those specific numbers, and then I'm going to use that to then make this decision that's going to potentially cost me money. Like that has me uncomfortable because, as we all know, AI can just make up answers. And like if you actually start digging into it, it's like, how the hell did you even get here? So it's getting way better and very fast. And I do think it'll be more useful for those types of tasks in the future. And I would say like if businesses really want to prioritize using that, like there's a place they can start now, which is like start actually collecting your data well and collecting it in a clean manner and standardize it, et cetera, which is all boring stuff that you would give to a data engineer to do. But it's very important because what you learn very on in like MPP school, public policy, and I assume much other schools, is that trash in is trash out when you're doing an analysis. So if you give it bad data, you're going to get a bad response. And that's regardless of whether or not you're using, AI or you're doing it yourself. Mm-hmm. So there's definitely groundwork that can be done now. And I do think it's going to be very a valuable companion and allow you to potentially get more efficiency out of the processes that you're doing.
That's great. I think there's a lot there that people can hear and understand, because I think that's a great area that I honestly don't think very much about. I think most people think copywriting or writing of some kind. It's like, oh, I can just give a prompt, it'll spit out a response, emails, sales, reach outs. But data, I think, could be really interesting. It's like, hey, here's my data set, produce me a report that does this, that, and the other. And it's like, not replacing data analysis, but like speeding that faster. So then like the human can focus on the implications and the like under discerning the reports. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
Like what you said, where your whole time in the government space was like sifting the data and doing it. But it's like, no, the real value is like, here's the data on the batteries and how like the bulb is like, what are we going to do about it? Like that, what's your recommendation based on the data? So
like buzzwords for us, I guess, is like if you can get yourself out of sausage making is what you're describing, like the really nerdy data stuff in Excel or in SQL, hopefully. If you can get yourself out of that and instead just like trying to make decisions from the data with these insights, that would be awesome. Personally, I don't think it's there yet. I'm still waiting to see something that's solid enough to where I'm like, okay, now I use it day to day on like, remind me how I can do this, or write this script, and then I'll make some changes to it to optimize it. But like it gets you 80% of the way there, which is awesome. To me, it's always easier to revise something than it is to start from scratch.
Sure.
And like that's what you're talking about from like the content side. To me, you can tell a post was created by AI immediately if like you're just looking at it, right? But for us, like what we do is we'll start with AI on some of like our LinkedIn posts, and then we'll revise from there, right? Like we'll give it the general concept, or maybe just as like a thought partner is like, okay, given like we'll train it on like, here's the things that we've talked about, or here's our ideal audience that we're going after, right? Give me an idea of like 10 things that might be interesting to that particular audience. And then you pick a few, and then it's like, okay, start an article, write me an article or an outline for those things that we had then identified. And then you edit, you go kind of go back and forth. And it's like this whole, it's like a relationship with an editor or like a copywriter or whatever the names of the terms of those people would be. And like you use that as kind of a thought partner. But where the product is not good is when your expectation is I just put a prompt in, I get an answer, and I paste it. And I was like, no, you got to use some of your head as not just a hat rack. Like you got to use a little bit of the brain inside.
Sure. No, I totally agree. I always say treat it like an intern, but in your case, probably not a good analogy because your interns were making hundreds of millions of dollars decisions with no training. But I think that's part of it too and I feel like the more you use it for those ideation, and you just don't even think, it's like, oh, I need a blog post or I need a topic or I need a whatever. It's like, I feel like that part of your brain kind of slowly dims down, where if you just do that, I feel like years from now, it's going to make people like creativity is going to really suffer, I feel like, because there'll be no original ideas if only people lean on that,
Yeah, I don't know. This is something we could go like hours into, and we probably need to open up the bourbon outside. But it's very fascinating to me what the future is going to look like. And I even think like over our time period, like our parents lived through an interesting time where they've seen a lot change, right? Like they've gone from maybe not even black and white TV in their house to like now, which is like you got that personal computing device in your pocket anytime you want. You can do anything with. I think we are living kind of a version of that, and I think with AI it'll hasten that like change a lot. And so, like I think you even find for us, like growing up, like we were trying to figure out like how do you learn in this new environment with the resources that you have. And so like the traditional model is like, we don't want to give you, those tools to make life easier because then you're going to forget how to do X, Y, Z. You're going to lose creativity. And I don't know that that's necessarily happened, or at least we've adapted in a way that, I feel like we've adapted in a way where like it's fine and it's a new reality. So like I don't know that I want to be pessimistic and think like we're going to lose our creativity if we aren't continuing to use it. But I don't know. Like on the other hand, is like I do agree though. Like if you're not moving a muscle, like you're going to lose it. So I just think it may just be a different way that we interact that we don't know currently. And it'll be interesting when we see it, and nobody will know what the hell it is.
Sure.
Right?
Totally. I know a lot of people listening to this are business leaders, business owners. What are like the key metrics if someone's looking at their business and they're thinking, okay, well, I have data, I have a CRM, I've got a dashboard, I've got what are those key data points? You mentioned focus on the one thing. What is that one thing that most small business owners should be focusing on?
Yeah, I'm going to cheat, and I'm going to give you the two things, which is back to and the sales and marketing side. Like, well, okay, if you want one, it's profit. Like that's it, profit. If you're not making money, you're running a charity. So like that's probably first and foremost. But from a sales and marketing perspective, profit is very important. And in general, we're working with businesses that want to grow, right? So like I said that a little tongue in cheek, like, well, you're running a charity. Maybe you are running a charity, and that's what you want to do, right? I'm the treasurer for our church that we go to, and like our goal is not profit. Our goal is how much money can we get out in supporting the community. So like our top goal is nonprofit. But anyway, so assuming that you're running a for-profit business that's trying to grow, I'd say profit is the number one. And then from a sales and marketing perspective, it's LTV and cost of acquisition, I think, are the most important. And there's other metrics that fold up within that. And I think this is maybe a good opportunity. I'm going to provide you a link to some resources that we put together for listeners of your podcast if they're interested in like, okay, what are kind of good next steps? What are metrics that I should be tracking in sales and marketing? How are people doing this within our within their businesses? On that link, you'll find some articles that may be helpful on that forefront. How do you calculate these things? So like we threw out LTV. Like how do you calculate that? There's actually many ways to calculate it.
How do you calculate your CAC?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
CAC is my favorite. Just a simple way to say it. It's too much fun. So.
Yeah, I'm trying not to hit. Yeah. Yeah. So, but anyway, so those resources are there for anybody that wants to, use them. Obviously, they can reach out to us. I'd love to help businesses, regardless if you're an American manufacturer. I'd really love to help you. But if you're, a business out there really interested in those types of things, I'd also love to have a conversation, try to help out, because this is stuff I geek out about.
Sure. No, I love that. Finally, just advice to if someone's listening and they have a formalized education in industry and they're thinking about taking a leap or switching gears. It sounds like this is a trend with your family. When your dad decided to become a teacher, your mom went back into law school, you left politics to do marketing, data analytics. What advice would you have for somebody if they're considering switching industries or professions?
I think, that's a good question. I think it's really scary when you're contemplating like big life changes, regardless if it's even that, right? And I go back, it's like it's either you're growing or you're dying. So like it's even with that when you're picking a new profession or something new to do, it's like it's just another opportunity to learn new things. And I think like one thing is to be a little bit patient with yourself, that like you need to be learning these new skills and it's going to take time. Nothing happens overnight. So I think give yourself a little bit of patience, but at the same time, like, man, just dig in. Like go back to that grit that, you learned diving in the snow and thinking about quitting football. But man, just be gritty. And I do think, for a younger audience in particular, it's a lot easier when you don't have, you may not have, some of the commitments when you're younger. So if you're like really young, it's like, man, dig in. It's funny. I got invited to talk at Simpson for a mass symposium on a panel. And one of the questions was like, what does work-life balance look like? And, how can you do that? And I kind of felt bad for this answer, but I really believe it. Is like, it's fine if you want work-life balance to be important in your life. And it should, if it is important to you, that should be a focus. But like for me, it's like, I didn't really have that as a focus. It's going to be more, and my wife and I are expecting a child, end of September, early October. So work-life balance is going to be more important. But in like the early stages and through career shifts is like work until 2:00 in the morning, handing off Hazel, like, that was fine. And like you can be gritty and learn that way. And maybe that's not good advice, but at the same time, sometimes I feel like my job of sharing, information isn't necessarily to tell you what you want to hear. It's like sometimes it just takes rolling up your sleeves and, getting down in the shit and doing it. So
no, I love that advice. I think to your point as well, people want to have the perfect work-life balance in their 20s. And I'm like you said, if you're not married, you have no kids, you have no commitments, like take the chances, take the job that pays shit wages, that gives you the great experience, do the stuff that you have to work super late to learn those and accelerate your knowledge, like, okay, if you're 45 or 50 and your marriage is on the rocks and your kids hate you, it's like, okay, maybe you should really lean into family and like prioritize that. But I think there is a good balance, and it's not a bad thing to be really committed to your work, as if you're feeling like you said you found the thing you're passionate about. And it's a big thing. So
yeah, and I love what you said. Like I do think that one of the things that I really benefited from was being able to kind of lean into the fact that like, man, you don't have priorities when you're young. You're going somewhere and it's like, I don't actually know anybody out here now. So it's like, might as well try these new things, right? So as much as you can, push your comfort zone and try to find these new things as early as you can in your career. And then hopefully you'll find something that you really love doing. And if you don't, you can be like my parents and in the middle of life and figure it out. And you know what pushed them through was, I guess, just their grit and trying to get things done. So it is possible. We have a tremendous capacity to handle stress. And if it's not going to kill you, you're going to get through the other side and it's going to make you better.
No, I love that. Alex, thanks so much for coming on the show. We'll definitely make sure to link up the resources for people in the description box. where can people find you if they want to connect with you more outside of just those resources?
Yeah, great places on LinkedIn. We're very active on LinkedIn, post down there. So hit me up there. Other than that, you'll see through that link our website domain. If you put in a little request there, that really goes directly to me. So happy to chat through that. Yeah, those are two great locations.
Perfect. Alex, thanks so much for coming on the show. If you guys have made it this far in the show, you guys know what to do. Subscribe if you're listening or watching on Spotify or YouTube, and give us a 5-star rating if you're watching on iTunes. We'll be posting clips from all of our 85 episodes on social media, so check us out there. And until our next episode, my name is Ryan Snaadt. It rhymes Snaadt, and I'm out. Peace. Thank you so much for watching yet another episode of the Rhymes with Odd podcast. We really do appreciate your support. If you could give us a 5-star review on Apple iTunes, that makes a world of difference, guys. Also, if you're tuning in on YouTube or Spotify, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss another episode, and check us out on social media. Also, if you'd like to inquire more about our services here at Snaadt Media Group or learn about doing your own podcast for your own business, you can find us at snaadmedia.com. We'll see you in the next episode. Peace.